Welcome everybody to this fantastic panel session for the Blockchain for Good Summit today. We're going to be introducing our speakers to start. My name is Dr. Lisa Cameron and I'm the moderator for this session. I was an MP in the UK Parliament for just under 10 years and part of the International Development Select Committee in the Parliament. I want to give a very warm welcome to our speakers today, and we're going to have a very interesting panel where we're looking at financial inclusion and real action and use cases throughout our session. Over to Bitsabi, first of all, to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. I'm currently the CFO at Hedera Hashgraph. Prior to Hedera Hashgraph, I have a lot of experience in fintech and traditional finance. But the most relevant to this conversation is when I was at Citigroup, I had the pleasure to work very close in community development, microfinance, which later was transformed into financial inclusion. So a lot of the things that my perspectives into this topic comes from that experience, from my own upbringing as humble upbringing as an Mexican immigrant into the United States and have worked globally. And I'm now bringing it back to the Web3 world, the blockchain, how these technologies really can solve some problems and transform people's lives.
Thank you so much, Bitsabi, and over to Nauman.
Thanks again, Dr. Lisa. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. This is Naman Mustafa. I'm currently the CFO for Stellar Foundation, which is the mobile-first only blockchain foundation that focuses on the quote-unquote idea that people have access to mobile phones, and that could be one of the best ways for them to get access to the financial products. Before joining Stellar Foundation, I was CFO for CoinsPH, one of the largest regulated cryptocurrency exchange and wallet services in Philippines. For me, my last 7 years in CoinsPH has been a very hands-down approach to seeing how the impact of blockchain and the financial inclusion has on the unbanked economy. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those introductions. We have a wealth of experience on this panel. And I wanted to start just by finding out a bit about each of your backstories. Bitsabi, you come from originally a traditional finance background and as you said, a very humble beginning yourself that you can draw on your own experience as an immigrant too. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey and how that has formed your ethos in the work that you do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Well, we have really just this since I was a very young age. In Mexico, as my parents were very humble and sometimes lack of resources, and we needed to be very creative. But I don't know, I cannot describe how really since I was like super young, I used to play make believe with fake bills, pretending that I was giving microloans to people. For sure, I didn't know what microloans were at the time. But the only scene that I saw at that time is going with my father to pay in the banks, and the banks look so pristine and clean and everyone. So in my mind, without having role models of guidance of financial bank, the money is there. So that's where I can go and help my family. So I got very obsessed and getting into the financial services. I actually ended up joining a very young age at Citigroup. I started as a teller in Citigroup in Mexico, and quickly I was able to go up in different positions, climb the ladder. And then when I moved to the United States as a student to pursue my business education, I had opportunity to join Citigroup Community Development, and prior to that, I was in BlackRock, and it was an amazing experience to be in BlackRock, the biggest asset firm at the time. BlackRock just purchased Barclays Global Investors, We were creating the ETFs all around Latin America, doing wrappers all around the world. It was an incredibly amazing experience, but I felt like something was missing from my career. I wanted to give back to the community. I wanted to be able to give to that little girl. That's why I started with this very personal story. I mean, without going into more details, to give back, like that dream of, oh, financial institutions can help people to get out of poverty, can help people to have a more securely safe financial lives. But surroundings for me represented healthcare, represented access to medicine from my parents, represented education, represented opportunities that I didn't have at that time, and I needed to create in a very different manner. So I was really obsessed, one, to get back to Citigroup, and two, to be in an area where I can help the community. So the great opportunity to join community development and microfinance at the time came out was during 2008, which many of you may remember. United States was the great one of the big recession at the time, and that was when fintech and all these created new tools and ideas were coming back. So while I was at Citigroup, it left a lasting experience. I met amazing people, and one of the things that I realized, everyone really has the desire to change the world, to have lasting um, impact in what we do. So in community development, the way that Citigroup really it was in the United States, because we had to comply with the Community Reimbursement Act. Most banks have to do, most banks that have branches. But it really, we have an amazing leader and all this a senior C-level at the time, that it evolved into, let's move from a sprinkle of goodness to real programs, to real impact. So really what it was is small donations that we needed to do to comply with CRA, moving to much lasting programs. And that's when we started thinking, how can you, what are really the pillars that is going to help you to make a lasting change? And that's when Citigroup and the group at the time created these 5 pillars, which I now continue to see as the most important pillars of financial inclusion, which is financial literacy, job creation, asset building, capacity building, and neighborhood revitalization. But having my CFO hat, and many times in other businesses, we say, let's go back to the fundamentals. When we are understanding how the business works, how do you actually make money? What does it mean to be in this business? And and this is kind of my call to action for financial inclusion. Let's go back to the fundamentals. It has been years of us, of many of institutions and practitioners that are truly trying to make difference. And I think that we had deviated from different concepts and theoricals, but now is the reality, the technology is here. I left Citigroup to get into fintech and ultimately follow my passion of being in technology and find the technology that can really help those enable those pillars to be transformational. Just gonna pause here because I can go on and on. That's why I'm gonna pause here.
Well, you're clearly so passionate about the work that you're doing. And I think from the fundamentals of going back to your early experience and really building upon your understanding of what it's like for people not perhaps to have all of the tools, and the difference it can make for communities to provide those tools to everybody and bring them into a world of financial inclusion. So I think that that's an amazing story and resonance from your own experience. And Nauman, a bit about your own experience. Financial inclusion is at the very heart of most of the work that you're doing, and how do you feel that fits with the ethos of your own background and your journey to this point?
Thanks. That's a bit that was an amazing experience that you shared with us. Very inspiring. For me, the financial inclusion was something that I came across in my previous startup, which I mentioned to you in Philippines, and the idea of having a blockchain powered wallet, or having just a wallet for the unbanked population by the founders of the company, was based on the fact that Philippines as a country at that point of time would have roughly 75% unbanked, undeserved population that would not have access to financial products, even the basic products. And once you don't have access to financial products, you cannot even go advanced beyond that, like getting credits, microcredits, um, getting a credit score. All of these insurance products would not be able to do that. And while you're seeing that the 75% population does not have access to financial products, the same population shows that around 80% or more has a Facebook account or have some sort of access to social media or internet-based messaging services. Now, when you put these two together combined, you realize that it's not the fact that it's just the lack of education that's here, but there's something else that is stopping people from being part of a financial inclusive economy. And that's where we saw the benefits of having services, which is like a blockchain powered wallet like OneSPH came into being, which allowed many undeserved population to have access to financial products. This was more like a branchless wallet service, which connected to multiple ways of deposits and withdrawals. So whether it would be the likes of 7-Eleven, where you could deposit 24/7, or you could have a local pawn shops where you could easily withdraw the money. And now you have people who are using this product as if it's just their way of getting deposits, getting withdrawals. And we saw how the expansion came into being, where we ended up serving more than 18 million customers at one point of time. And most of them, we saw the population would do deposits and withdrawals out of the rural population. That was for CoinsPH. And my current experience with Seller Foundation, which is basically a mobile first blockchain service, the ethos, as you mentioned, was that maybe there is population that do not have access to the financial services, but pretty much everyone has a mobile phone and pretty much everyone has a mobile number that's somehow connected to some form of ID that gives the relevance to a person being able to access some credit scores. And that's where the Seller Foundation's first EVM compatible blockchain came into being, where its goal was more focused towards regenerative finance, working towards an economy like Africa, working with partners such as Mento Protocol, which has which has blockchain-backed stablecoins, as well as Opera Mini Pay, which basically focuses on the idea that everyone uses the browser, and we will be giving them access to wallet services, and they could easily send and receive funds by using their mobile phone number rather than going through a more technical way of doing through blockchain.
Yeah, so it sounds like from both of your journeys, the financial inclusion is really at the heart of the work that you're doing now. And it comes from a place inside that you want to reach people who have perhaps been more disadvantaged in the past and to make a huge difference in their lives. And it's very interesting to me as someone who was working in the Parliament for so many years and part of the International Development Committee for the first 4 or 5 years of the Parliament when I was in session, and going to Africa. And actually I saw a huge change as well in some developing countries, including across Africa, when mobile phones became more accessible to people, and that actually in some communities, very rural communities, perhaps people didn't have basic essentials like even shoes, but they wanted to have a mobile phone because that communication and the financial inclusion and the ability to connect with the rest of the world was so fundamental to their lives, and really, you know, shifted my perspective on so much of the work that we were doing there in terms of how digital transformation can make a difference to people, no matter where they're situated. So I wonder, in terms of, Bitsabi, the work that you're doing now with that community focus, with the blockchain technology, what kind of use cases do you think are going to be the key ones that are going to continue to make a difference? Some we may not even know of yet, of course, but there may be some that you're already aware of.
If you're I just gonna go back a little bit to the comment that you said about Africa and your experience of being in Africa and not even having shoes, but wanting a phone and the digital
Yeah.
transformation. And this is where it comes back to the title of this. And I was very excited to be part of the panel, the multifaceted approach. And that's what I tied to the pillars. When you think about those young kids that you saw without shoes, yes, they have a phone, but they're not going to think about how to learn how to do budgets, financial literacy. They're not going to think about how to save or open an account when they need jobs, when they need an infrastructure that even the area that they are running around, it has concrete, not just um, uh, the earth. They need ability to have more than just what many times we talk. Financial inclusion has been about, in my view, in my experience, when we talk about financial inclusion, people talks a lot about what are the products that serve them and what is education. But there is that other part. It is about, are the institutions ready and understand the capacity building, not only for the individual but the institutions? Do they understand who they are serving? Do they have the tools to do that? And then do the area, like I mean, so many rural areas in India, and females don't feel safe because they don't have bathrooms. Similar to where you're running, do you have shoes? There is a lot more, and it is a very complex problem. It's just not one area solves the problem, and it is really a very multifaceted problem. That's why I mean, that's why my experience City Group, those five pillars were so in touch and do tie to the SDGs, to the um, United Nations, but it still is it's kind of a different focus. So talking about use cases at Hedera as a CFO, I have a great fortune to see what happens in the entire ecosystem, and talking about specific about things that are important like job creation. One of the very interesting um, projects that are working in City Group is one is called Dubo, which is really creating marketplaces for this intermediate or the small scale farmers. So it's creating more job and opportunities. Then there is other one that is a tech that is working in revitalizing the neighborhoods on crisis and crisis affected areas. By leveraging on the ideas, they collaborate with NGOs and other international areas to really offer disaster struck regions vital access to relief through digital wallets. When you start thinking about, and I encourage everyone that's hearing here, think about outside the box. Really, financial inclusion is just more than the products and the education. It's like those other pillars, those areas. There is, of course, sorry, I was about to say City, at Hedera, we are trying to use the capabilities of Ledger and tokenization of real world assets to be able to fuel many of those new businesses. And Africa NTech is really building capacity building, asset building. And they're in working with banks and national and federal banks to be able to bring closer to the underbanked products, closer to the underbanked, and bridge the traditional financial system to the Web3. Like that, I can go on. There are several ones. Stakes Finance and Agrio, they also bring very important capabilities building on Hedera. But the message here is really, we now have the technology. I can go back to the little girl. Oh, how can I do? I didn't know anything besides. I mean, when I learned accounting, I'm an accountant in Mexico, and a finance professional in the United States, financial engineer in the United States. But I learned accounting with the green teas and the 12 and 14 colors, really doing it by hand, not with computers, not with internet. Now that we have internet computers and an amazing, immutable, transparent, decentralized ledger, which is blockchain, is really encouraged. What are those opportunities beyond what we're seeing right now? What else can we do to bridge the different gaps there are in the economy and remove the biases, because that's a lot of the things, but we are not building the right products or seeing really the problem as it is. It's a complex problem. We need a complex, multifaceted solution, and removing those biases through technology will allow us to really get there. But there are amazing use cases right now, not only in Hedera and other ledgers. Of course, I represent Hedera and I love what we're doing at Hedera. But it's exciting to live now in this time that I mean, primarily for me to see we didn't have the technology to now we do have the technology. So now it's how we apply that technology to build that future.
Thank you. That's very inspirational again. And I think one of the things that I also brought to the Parliament was being, I'm a clinical psychologist, so the first psychologist ever to be elected to the UK Parliament. And I think you really brought it home to me when you were talking about, you know, the journey of the little girl, and I'm sure this little girl would be very proud of the work, the immense work that you're doing now to help so many people. And I feel like it is very complex, and it's not just the physical environment, it's people's psychology and their mental health as well, and supporting that and making sure that we look at people in a very holistic manner when we're creating the solutions as well, and of course engage those who are involved at the very crux of everything that is being created with them rather than for them. So Nauman, you were speaking as well about the journey and making a difference, and are there particular use cases that you think are going to make that difference, or that you can already see you know, sort of shattering the glass ceiling for those who really need to have the financial inclusion we've been speaking of?
Absolutely. So, like growing up, we have always heard the term when we go to the banks and we say, or we go to any like remittance company and we're like, hey, I would like to send money to this part of the world. You have two questions to ask them. Number one, how long will it take them? And number two, how much it will cost. And the answers that we have seen was always it will take 3 to 5 business days, and the cost approximately turns out to be between 8 to 10%. That's a big amount of money for someone who has like whose monthly income depends on someone sending them remittance from one part of the world to the other. And what blockchain did, it actually removed these two blockers. So now you have people receiving money within a couple of seconds. That's huge when you think about someone who received money on 30th rather than on the 5th or 6th of the following month. And secondly, it costed them maybe 1/10 of a cent. And we have seen all of the new blockchain EVMs coming there too, and other blockchains who are supporting the facet that it is a much faster and much cheaper to do the transaction. So that's one use case. I've seen this on hand already. Why suddenly in the last 10 years, people who were using a traditional way of receiving their freelancer income has moved towards a blockchain-based revenue earning model. So that's a very much well respected and well used use case. The second one that I can think of is the blockers of having a middleman make a decision for you. And now being a part of a blockchain ecosystem, you remove every single middleman. Your funds have access to global liquidity. If you're holding a stable coin and you have to convert your stable coin to a local coin, you don't have to go to one person. You can just go to DeFi and get access to like a global liquidity. That gives you the best possible rate to get the best outcome for your funds. So these are two of the ones that I've actually seen in real life. Few of them that are still ongoing, and I think they have done a tremendous work. In the sell of ecosystem, we have Mula Market that basically uses your on-chain data to give you sort of a credit score, and you can use that for that purpose. You have Haraka Finance, who uses your social presence and your social reputation to give access to financial products. You have Mentor Protocol, who are not doing the fiat backed stable coins, but are doing blockchain based backed stable coins, which basically means that irrespective of world events, your stable coins are going to be stable because they are backed by a much stronger blockchain based assets such as Bitcoins and Ethereum. And this gives access to a more decentralized products. Uh, I could imagine that like we can go on and on what type of use case we could think about, but these are some of them that are on hand, of course, that we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's been fascinating, and you've certainly given a huge number of examples that show where the blockchain is being used for good and where it's got that real life use case value for people on the ground and on the front line. And it brings me back actually to one of the experiences we had when we were engaging at the very start of the conflict in Ukraine, and when we were engaging as parliamentarians at that time. And we learned, and I think it was quite a shock to so many parliamentarians at the time, because most hadn't been engaged or heard about blockchain or cryptocurrency, that actually when the traditional banking systems had failed at the very start of that conflict, that people in the front line were very reliant to have blockchain technology and to have money transferred in that means right to those who were most vulnerable and needed it at the time. And it was one of the first use cases that I think really resonated with so many legislators in the parliament at that time. So that kind of links with what you're saying in terms of that it can be used, in very desperate situations as well, to help those people who are very much struggling, but also as a mainstream method of payments, which is much faster and has less cost to those who perhaps can't afford the high costs of the traditional systems. I'm not seeing any questions coming through. I've asked for some a little while ago, but perhaps what we could do then for the remaining few minutes is just have a think about what we hope to see in the future. What would be the key thing that you would hope to see in terms of support for blockchain for good use cases and financial inclusion? What kinds of things do you think we should be researching, funding, looking at in more detail? Any kind of research that might be apparent to yourselves? Nauman, do you have any examples of that quickly?
I would say I think the fact that like some of your experience around being in the UK Parliament, I think some of the research that obviously needs to go in is first of all, like, one of the strong pillar that Sabe was saying was around financial literacy. That is something that would elevate billions of people from not even being aware of what type of financial product they can get access to. And that goes to the real crux of the groundwork, where you really want to make sure that people who always think of financial products as just going to a bank branch, standing in line, waiting for the turn to come, and then realize the fact that maybe they're not able to open the branch account because there's a minimum deposit requirement, for example. For
Yeah.
them getting access to a blockchain based product, as well as the idea of what good blockchain has brought, how to be careful also with some of the nuances we've seen that people have faced in blockchain, and some of the good use cases that we already are experiencing. And if people would find out, they would always relate to that in their ongoing life and realize that, hey, instead of sending a conventional way of sending funds to my mom in Philippines, I can actually, choose blockchain and, let's say, use a local wallet over there, where she can get the funds much faster and get the best possible rate.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking as well, just for the last minute or so, it'd be great to hear, bit Sabi, what you feel in terms of how the communities could be involved as well, because I feel like these use cases should be developed in conjunction with communities, and that would be at the very heart of your work.
Yeah, I think that is everyone, community is everybody. So I think that from the builders is continue building and be have courage and be curious, and make sure that you also use the technology. Like I use it in the day to day for simple stuff. That's then educational institutions just again is be curious and offer what people are asking for, because there is a lot of requests right now, blockchain and Web3. So then, but I think that the other part of the community are the leaders of big companies, the leaders of government. The government, I don't have experience that, I'll leave it to you, Lisa, but in terms of the business side is understand what consumers you serve, because whether it's different if it's a B2B, but we have most of the large companies at B2C. So the ones that are B2B to C and then B2C, really consumers understand those digital first generations, that we see a lot of just only digital first generations. That was not my generation, but is the ones after me, and really start being curious and understanding how AI and blockchain comes together to really impact and help that community and help those consumers. So from the business perspectives, yes, it's community that we want to help, but this is not charity, it's building infrastructures. It is infrastructure. Those communities you are going to serve, those communities bring revenue, they are consumers. So it's really changing your mind, I encourage everyone changing the mindset of how we move to really build infrastructures that make sense to everybody, and that everyone is part of the solution, of course, from the builders, the educators, and the decision makers. So everyone together really being curious about this technology and coming together to discuss about. And we hear a lot about AI, but AI and blockchain needs to come together. So they are two technologies that come together. They are not desegregated, in my very humble view.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. We do have a very quick question at the end. I wonder if we have time for that. It's someone who has come in from UNDP, who acknowledges that financial inclusion, where there are crises, and the banking systems are, not working at that point, are much needed. But they're wondering about how blockchain for good, how Hedera, how the work you're doing at the CELA Foundation should be linking with the UN in terms of the goals and aspirations of financial inclusion and the SDGs. If anyone has any quick comments.
I think that we already started conversation and continue to having conversations. We need more builders. We need more buildings to say, this is the problem I want to solve because I understand and I live that. So, for example, at Citigroup, one of the things that I saw the most the most successful projects are the people that understand the problems. And sometimes we have builders just, this make money, or this will be great, but you really need to understand the problem. So conversations are starting. I think that what we are needing right now is to really, again, and I'm repeating myself, mind shift into is an infrastructure. How do we build those infrastructures? It's not a program, and it's not a set of theoretical comments. It's an infrastructure, and we need to action that. And the technology is there. So we just need to figure out how to bring all those pieces and be interoperable to build that infrastructure. It's not one ledger, it's all of us together.
Yeah. Any quick comments, Nauman, just before we conclude?
I would say that, like for me, just speaking out of my experience, Philippines was one of the first Asian countries, surprisingly, to be the one to regulate virtual currency and virtual assets and providing licenses. Um, I think what is important, and especially as you mentioned, to speak about at the stage of UN, is that once there is a better clarity from the government point of view about what is virtual currency and how the treatment is done, that opens up the door significantly, because now you have the traditional rails such as banking and other banking partners who would be more open and more acceptable to work with the startups or with the fintechs that are hardcore focused in blockchain. So from UN perspective, I think as you start seeing use cases, as you start seeing government giving a much better clarity, and government actually seeing the interest, having some sandbox environment for people to actually work on, they will see the benefits of these happening, and a clarity in the law will help that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And we're doing so much work across all of the different parliaments actually to try and even educate the legislators about this new emerging technology and how it can impact right across from education to jobs of the future to the financial inclusion and the work at the level of the UN as well. So I think we all have to play our part. So thank you for that question from Burkun Mavis from the Blockchain Academy. I don't think we have any other questions at this point. So I wanted to thank the panelists for excellent session. It's been very, very informative, and I think it shows and gives great authority to the work of the Blockchain for Good Summit that it's achieving today, and going forward as well, that we collaborate and continue to work on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.